Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is Joel. I'm the executive director of FZY. And also joining on the call tonight is Alex, who is one of the movement workers. Actually, is just about to be finishing her role as a movement worker towards the end of the year, who has been working along with bringing people onto the program. So I'm going to just say a couple more words about myself, and then we're actually it's not going to be a very long meeting. It's going to be fairly short, but we're going to open up at the end for questions as well. So just a couple of words about myself, just so everyone knows who I am exactly. So as I mentioned, like my name is Joel. I'm the executive director of FZY. I've been actually working for FZY for 21 years now. Since I was a movement worker like Alex is today, like I've been working, I started in August 2003 as a movement worker. I actually went on the year course program myself as a participant in 1999, about what's that, 25 years ago now, called to the century. It's making me feel old. Um, and actually, after I worked for FZY for 4 years in England, from 2003 to 2007, in a variety of different roles. A couple of years actually recruiting for the program, something similar to what Alex has been doing now. And when I then moved to Israel 16 years ago, in 2008, I moved to Israel, and for the first 6 years of me living in Israel, I worked directly on the year course program. I had a variety of different roles on the year course program. I started off as a PR marketing coordinator for year course. I then moved on to be the FZY coordinator on the year course program, and then I finished off for the last few years of me working directly on year course. I was the head of one of the sections, so I was responsible for around 100 year course participants and the staff, and guided them through their year. And then 10 years ago, I moved away from the year course program, working directly on the year course program, to working on to be FZY's executive director. So now my work on year course is not direct; it's slightly more indirect, and I help to facilitate and to manage the program in Israel. So as I said, I live in Israel. I'm actually currently in the UK at the moment on work, but I live in Israel in Modi'in with my wife and two children. And that's a little bit about who I am. I just want to give you a little bit of background. What I want to do first this evening is I know that there have been several webinars which have happened that Young Judea have been running, and I want to kind of like first what I want to try and do is try to make everyone understand the relationship between FZY, Young Judea, and how the year course program works in cooperation with one another. So for those that aren't fully aware, Young Judea is FZY's sister youth movement based in America. We've been sister youth movements for many, many years now, both informally and formally. We both have very similar ideologies and similar values behind us. We're both Jewish Zionist pluralist youth movements. Some of the terminology and some of the ways that we operate may be slightly different, but basically, Young Judea are one of the largest Zionist youth movements in America, which has a similar values and similar ideology to FZY. And what we tried to do actually was in the 1970s, where some FZY year course participants and some Young Judea year course participants kind of like met up throughout the year, saw each other. Actually, they met on the Mahon program, and then kind of like started discussing, kind of said like, why don't we just do our gap year together? And since that point, in various degrees to one another. We've been working with Young Judea on the program, and for about the last probably it's been about 15 or so years now. Our programs are pretty much entirely merged. Which what that means in practice is this: that the Young Judea are the people in Israel who operate the program. They officially the year course staff are officially employed by Young Judea Israel, which is the Israel branch of Young Judea, and and they are the people who hire the staff. They're the people who manage the staff. They're the people who basically are running the program on a day-to-day basis. When it comes to like FZY and our relation to it, there are many FZY alumni who are part of the staff. For example, the assistant director of Young Judea Israel, someone called Adam Genshil, who's a past Mazkir, past movement worker of FZY. And there are other staff who have worked either grew up in the UK, like Rabbi Adam Drucker didn't actually grow up in FZY, but is British originally. He grew up in the UK. So there's very close links between FZY, the UK community, and Young Judea and the Year Course program. But on an official level, on a very official level, we're partners in the program, but Young Judea Israel run the program on the ground. They're the people who have the staff are officially employed by them, and FZY effectively like buy into the Year Course program, but we work very closely with them on that. As I said, I'm based in Israel. I worked on the Year Course program myself for 6 years as a Year Course employee. So I sit with the Year Course staff, sit with the Young Judea Israel employees on a regular basis, and we make sure the program that they are providing is delivering what it is that we want. So that's why, and now I want to kind of like maybe move a little bit into kind of like communication and how that works throughout the year. That obviously everyone on this call has applied to an FZY Year Course program, because there are differences, and I'm going to touch on those in a minute, what the differences are. But basically, in terms of communication and how that works, is the communication when participants are on the program, most of that should run directly through the Year Course staff. You probably have been receiving several emails from someone called Daphna, who is the main point person on the Year Course staff, who will be addressing parent questions, concerns throughout the program, and will be regularly emailing. Like most weeks, emails will be going out to parents, just updating them on what's been going on the program and any information that they need to know. There are other people on the program who you'll also be connected with if you haven't already. That's someone like Tal, who is the responsible for the Tel Aviv component of the year. Rabbi Adam Drucker is responsible for all of the academics and informal education that happened on the year. Gil, who is responsible for volunteer and internship placements, and also some of the specialty programs that happen. There are other people throughout the year who work on the Year Course staff who you'll be introduced to at different points. The best people to ask questions in terms of if you're a parent, the best people to ask questions to is if you're not sure who the best person to ask to, the best person to reach out to is Daphna. If you know that it's a question specific to Tel Aviv living, then that will be to Tal. If it's specific to internships, it will be to Gil, etc. But if you're unsure of who to ask questions to throughout the year, as a parent, the best place to turn to is to Daphna. If as a participant, the best person to be turning to are to the Madrachim themselves. In Tel Aviv and in Jerusalem, there are Madrachim who are assigned to the group, and they will be the best people for you to direct your questions to. In terms of like FZY and where FZY fits into this as well, in terms of both communication and into the program itself, is that number one is if you're feeling that you're not getting the answers that you need from the Young Judea, from the Year Course staff, then please turn your attention towards the FZY staff, which is either myself or Alex is leaving her role, but Lucy, who's the FZY's Mazkira, she will be the other point of contact from FZY, as in addition to Claire. So myself, Claire, and Lucy are the 3 points of contact from FZY. But in most cases, we're probably going to be a secondary contact, and actually Daphna and the Year Course staff will be the best people to be turning your questions to, because they're the people who are in Israel working on the program directly, and we are kind of like, I guess, the conduit in between the UK European participants and the program itself. Where the program differs, and I think it's important to understand, is like the program is entirely the same program. The Americans, the Canadians, the British people, and people from other places around the world who come on the program or going onto the program are doing exactly the same things. They're volunteering, internship experiences in Tel Aviv, their studies in Jerusalem, etc. But there are some differences. Where the differences lie are, number one, we want to create an FZY community. We think that's important that within the larger American, North American community that are there on Year Course, we want to create a British European community which is there. And so we do that by having an orientation before the official program begins, and I will touch on that in a minute. We do that by once a week having FZY time. So we take the participants for an hour or two each week, just as the FZY participants, so they can move away maybe from the American accent and be around British people, and we will delve into some things which are maybe more focused on the British Jewish community. There will be 2 or 3 times throughout the year where we'll have an FZY Shabbaton, where all of the FZY participants will come together for a closed Shabbat, and we'll take them away somewhere in the country. There are other organizations which facilitate programming just for British gap year participants. For example, most years the British chief rabbi comes to Israel and runs a Shabbaton for the British participants. So that will go through FZY as well. So there are several areas there where the FZY program kind of is slightly different to the American program, but 99% of it is the program that all participants are running, which is why in terms of the communication, it's best to work through the year course staff because they're the people on a day-to-day basis who are going to be operating the program. I want to just touch on before delve onto kind of like the beginning of the program. Just want to touch a little bit on safety and security. I'm sure that you've been updated by the year course staff and some of their webinars about safety and security and how that works. Obviously, there has been since October 7th, there's been obviously a heightened tension in Israel. Israel is kind of like, I guess, in certain places in a state of war, with Hamas in Gaza, with Hezbollah in Lebanon, and with other Iranian proxies and with the Iranian state as well. What I want to kind of like say in terms of like safety and security is that it's always our number one priority. And in everything that we do, safety and security is our number one priority. If we do not believe that it's safe to run the program, that we will not run the program. If we believe that the program, needs to change, that the location needs to change, some of the activities on the program needs to change, then we will do that. I can tell you that after October 7th, there was a period of time for around 6 weeks. We moved the year course program from Tel Aviv and Jerusalem to Kibbutz Keturah, which is in the south in the Negev Desert. And we still ensured that they were having meaningful volunteering program there. And we would do something similar if the need arises. Obviously, right now, there's a lot of tension around whether Hezbollah and Iran are going to attack Israel, have missile attack or other attacks on Israel. I can say that in April, like something similar happened with Iran. There was an attack on Israel, and we were able to run the program safely throughout that. We're not going to promise and guarantee exactly what's going to happen tomorrow or next week or next month or in 5 months from now. Like we don't know. We don't claim to be military or security experts. But what we do claim is that, and what we do promise is that all of our decisions will be taken with the advice of the Home Front Command in Israel and the Cheder Matzav, which is an organization which pulls all of the Israeli security, Israeli Defense Forces, police information into one place and advises educational programs like ours in terms of steps that it should do. So what we can promise is that all of our program would adhere to the Home Front Commands and the Cheder Matzav's guidelines. Often we will go over and above what they advise and what they say to do, but we will make sure we're doing all of that and that the safety and security will always come first. And if we believe at any point we need to move the program, we need to cancel the program or curtail the program or whatever that is, then we will do that. As things stand right now, we believe that we can run a positive, meaningful, engaging program in Israel. Just 2 weeks ago, less than 2 weeks ago, our Israel tour program just finished, where we had just under 200 participants traveling the country. As I said, we've been running year course, throughout, last year through October 7th and since. So we're very confident in our abilities to run a safe and meaningful program, and we will update both parents and participants as we go through the program with any security changes or guidelines or whatever that may be, as and when they come. Like, we are obviously all hoping, like I'm sure you all are, that this situation will resolve itself peacefully as soon as possible. But we're prepared for all eventualities when it comes to the safety and security. Fine. So I want to turn attention to the beginning of the year course program. That year course. So I mentioned before that FZY has its own orientation before the full year course program begins. So the full year course program with all of the North American participants begins on August the 5th. But we actually bring all of the FZY participants through to Israel 3 days earlier on the 2nd of August for a 3-day orientation to kind of bring so the Brits can find each other, that we can kind of help with that process of how to be a minority in a majority. There is as of the last statistics which came out, with Young Judea send through statistics on a weekly basis. As of last week, there are 105 people who are going to be, as of Friday at the end of last week, there are 105 people who are going to be on the program. The vast majority of those are North American. And so, to be a minority in a majority, we want to kind of like also have some time to kind of explain how that works, how to find your place within this majority program. So we start the program on August 2nd. The flight to Israel, all the information should have been sent within the information guide, which you would have received around a month ago. And we do, definitely suggest to parents to keep that information guide, handy throughout the year, so you can always refer to the answers to most questions you have are probably found within that guide. But the flights themselves, there'll be participants are getting on the LY 312, which leaves Luton Airport at 9:45 a.m. on Monday, the 2nd of September. We ask that all participants arrive to the airport around 6:30 in the morning, where we'll be met with some FZY staff. That actually happens to be the flight that I'm actually returning back to Israel on with my wife and children. There's also another FZY employee called Emily, who is going to be traveling out also with the year courses, who on the first few days of the program will be helping to facilitate their year course orientation. So all London participants were asking to meet at 6:30 in the morning on August the 2nd in Luton Airport, where we'll go through the process of checking in and getting on the flight together. For those which are not from London, then we do ask that you'll be in direct contact with the FZY office, and we'll help facilitate the travel down to London, and make sure that the year course participants will be there at the right time, or help facilitate that process. So 9:30 a.m. is the flight, 9:45 a.m. is the flight, 6:30 we ask people to be in London Luton Airport, where we'll board, where the plane arrives in Israel time, like mid to late afternoon Israel time. And from that afternoon through, which I think is the Monday afternoon, all right there, is that right? I'm saying the 2nd, yeah, Monday the 2nd, I think it is, until Thursday the 5th, there'll be a 3-day orientation. During that orientation, participants, FZY year courses will be living in Beit Hillel, which is the base in Tel Aviv, which will be their home until the end of December. They'll be staying in the rooms that they will be staying in for the rest of the semester, so they won't have to start in one room and then move to a separate room when the Americans arrive. They'll be able to unload and unpack all of their things into the room where they'll be sleeping in for the whole first 4 months. They will also, at that time, sleeping in Beit Hillel will also be the Israeli participants who are on the program from Gorin Atid, who also start the program earlier than the Americans. They actually start around 2 weeks before the American participants, so they already would have been there a week and a half before the FZY year course participants arrive. And during this time staying in Beit Hillel, we'll be providing all the logistics in terms of the food and everything like that. And there'll be a program which is kind of put in place. There'll be one day we'll go out and do a hike to kind of get to see the land a little bit and spend some time together outside. There'll be a little bit of time to explore Tel Aviv. There'll be some times explaining kind of how the FZY elements of the program work, sometimes to explain how it works to be the minority and the majority program. There'll be an opportunity, we hope, to meet up with some past FZY year courses who will be in Tel Aviv at the time, so they can give some tips and advice. There'll be an opportunity to meet up with the Israeli participants who will be on the program, who will become the close friends of the British participants. That will be built into those 3 days. So for over those 3 days, there'll be a variety of different programming which will be happening there, in order just to basically prepare the FZY participants for around lunchtime-ish on Thursday, the 5th of September, when all of the American participants start arriving. They don't arrive all on one flight. They arrive in staggered flights, depending where they're coming from in America. And throughout that Thursday afternoon, the American participants will start arriving. And at that point, the FZY staff will be running that orientation. The FZY year course orientation will basically pass the FZYers over to the year course staff, who will then run a full orientation for all participants, which will be more focused on the Tel Aviv semester specifically, like how everything works in terms of cooking and cleaning and living in Beit Hillel, the internships, the volunteering, etc. So that will all happen kind of like after those first 3 days, with the which we have just as the FZY participants. So that's in terms of like the first few days of the program. That's how it'll be. We'll fly together as a group on the second. We'll have 3 days on orientation. Then the Americans will arrive on the fifth, and then we'll go head into an orientation where the year course staff will start leading that. Then from that point, when that orientation finishes, or that orientation with the full year course is roughly a week long, and then the full year course program begins, where people will start with their volunteering or internship placements, and will kind of like be then on a regular schedule, which will see them through to the end of the Tel Aviv semester, with obviously breaks for Chagim, and other things like that. That's kind of like how the beginning of the year will start, and kind of like how FZY's role fits within that. I hadn't, so that's kind of like at this point what I planned and wanted to share with you, because my understanding is through the different webinars, like you've had deep dives into the Tel Aviv semester, into Zman Yachad, into kind of like the different staff and how that operates, etc. So they're the kind of like the things that we wanted to share this evening. However, like I'm sure now there's 2 weeks or so, until just over 2.5 weeks, something like that, until the program begins. So we also wanted to like have an opportunity for you to ask questions, anything that you want to know, any concerns that you may have. We wanted to kind of like create this opportunity for basically to share that now. So if any of you have any questions, please feel free to take yourself off on mute, and we'll do our best at trying to answer those. Okay. Okay, so that's fine. Actually, I really recognize one more thing that I do want to just say before we close up, and in a minute we'll stop recording in a second, and if people want to stay on and ask questions more personally, we can do that. But one more thing that I just do want to add, and I can see Nikki, you've taken yourself off mute, so I'm going to say one thing, and then I'll come to you. Is I know that in was it 2 days' time, there's the A-level results are coming out, and we recognize that often like A-level results can sometimes have an impact into whether people get better results than they were hoping for, whether people didn't achieve the grades that they were hoping for, and sometimes that may have an impact on next year, on what year courses may need to do. What I would say is that on Thursday, once A-level results have come out, if you're faced with any challenges, any difficulties, whether that's got better grades than we were hoping and expecting, we may want to reapply on UCAS applications next year while the year course is in Israel. Like, how do we go about that process? Or, unfortunately, they missed their grade. We're not sure whether they may have to resit an exam, whether they may need to, apply via clearing, whether they need to reapply to UCAS next year, knowing what their grades are. Like, we can help and support with that process if there are things that, that the what you had hoped for and what you had planned for doesn't become a reality come Thursday, and that may have an impact onto the year course participation. Then please do reach out to us, and the sooner you reach out to us, the better. We will try and help and support and give you different examples of what people past year courses have done before in the past in different situations, and how we might be able to help facilitate that. Nikki, you have a question?
Yeah, I do actually. I've got two. Sorry. First one, how many Brits are there going at the moment?
Yeah, at the moment, there are 7 people who are signed up the year course. We know there are a couple of people who we've been in conversations with who are waiting until Thursday before making a final decision. So that number could fluctuate up. It could also, I'm sure, fluctuate down. But as of, we have 7 people who have applied.
Okay, amazing. And the other question I wanted to ask was, I'm totally untechnical. What do they do about an Israeli phone? Do they need an Israeli phone number, or?
Yeah, so in terms of, so yeah, you do. So it's within the guide that you do need to have an Israeli number. There are several different ways of doing that. There is one of the ways to do that is that have like a partnership. I say we have a partnership with that on the Israel Tour program, the short-term programs. We have a partnership with 019, which offer very good deals, both for short-term and long-term. We can send you after this call, maybe tomorrow, we can send you a link to a landing page that they have for FZY for long-term programs as well, where they offer deals where you basically pay a monthly fee for a SIM card, or on eSIM, etc. And no past participants have found using like have gone to just Israeli companies, like for example Golan or Pelephone or something like that, have like tapped into just getting a contract with an Israeli company. And there are sometimes some British phone companies, they provide that service as well. So it may be, if you're with, I don't know, EE or whatever it is, it may be worth like looking to see whether they can provide you with an Israeli number. But having an Israeli number, there's two things which are important when it comes to a phone. One is Israeli number, because the way that the healthcare system works in Israel is that in order to get appointments, and there are others sometimes also in terms of like in terms of getting visas and things like that, sometimes they will only communicate with you via an Israeli number. So having an Israeli number is important for that. The other thing which is important is making sure that participants have data, or like data use outside, which I'm sure we're living in 2024. I'm sure that everyone will have that anyway. But in order so that as part of our security measures, like we do track the participants' phones. It's not as in a Big Brother, but like in fact, the staff never really go onto the system to see where participants are. But if we were to get a security alert from the Cheder Matzav, which tells us there's a heightened security risk in a specific area, we need to be able to track people's phones immediately. So and so we therefore know, who we need to call immediately to say you may need to move from one place to another or whatever that is. So they do need to have a phone which has got data, enough data that that they can receive calls and messages, etc. And they will need to have an Israeli number. So any of those options, and I think there's a few options in the guide which are the suggestions. We will send out a landing page to 019, which is an option which is out there. We're not like endorsing them. We're not saying that's the best option. There may be better ones, but it's a package which they have, which is specifically for people which are on long-term programs. So they're used to working with people like on these types of programs, rather than going just to like an Israeli company like like Pelephone or something like that, where they generally deal with just Israelis who are normally looking for more than just a 9-month contract.
Cool. Okay, thank you. And with an eSIM, can you have both like your UK number and your Israeli number on one phone? Amazing.
Yeah. That's what most people do. Most people get an Israeli number, but they still, for their WhatsApp and for everything else, they normally just maintain their UK number.
Brilliant. Thanks, Joel. Sorry, I'm thick at these sort of things.
I'll be honest, I'm not an expert at it either. So, but from my understanding, yeah. But we'll send you that link out.
Sounded good to me. Thanks.
Okay. Are there any other questions? Okay. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to stop the recording now, and we'll kind of like close up this call. Myself and Alex will just stay on the call for another few more minutes in case anyone has any other questions, but also feel free to reach us in the FZY office as well, via email, via phone call, where we're more than happy to answer any calls in the build up over the next few weeks. Wishing everyone like the best results in a couple of days' time. I hope everyone gets what they're looking for, what they need. As I said, we're here if not. And yeah, we're looking forward to the start of the year in just a couple of weeks' time. So thank you all, and we'll be in touch.